everybody. Welcome to Rock and Roll Shin-Soo, episode number 96. Good to be back with everybody for our first episode of 2019. Hope everyone had a great holiday and New Year. My name is Gabe Estel. I'm here with my co-hosts Dennis Levi Leach and Jonathan Getz. How's it going, guys?
Good. Happy New Year.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, you know what? Tonight I'm really excited because we've got a couple special guests here that really can speak, I think, really well on the topic at hand tonight. Our last episode, we did a field guide to Detroit. That's where a little bit different. We took a little bit of a different take. It was our first one where we gave you sort of a musical tour of a city, at least virtually, and kind of talked about some of the sort of the quirks of the scene within Detroit, as well as kind of its rich history of music. Well, tonight, though, we're going to head a little bit east, and we're going to focus on Philadelphia. I think a city that has a very, very rich musical history, but often maybe kind of gets overlooked a little bit by sort of cities like Detroit and San Francisco and even Chicago for that matter, but really just an important place in American music. So I'm here with my special guest tonight. We've got Craig Rosen, Philly native. How are you, Craig?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me tonight.
Oh, we're so glad you're here, definitely. And we've also got Philadelphia native and artist Perry Shao. How are you, Perry?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah, thanks for being here. We're excited. So I want to go ahead and kind of start off on talking a little bit about some of your experiences with Philadelphia music. I know that both of you, Craig, you grew up in Philly, but then you give us a little bit of background. You headed to college in Colorado, but then ended up in Chicago then, right?
Kind of a short version. I grew up in Philly. I got my bachelor's in Philly, so I lived there. I was about 22, and then I went away to Boston, moved back to Philly for a year or so, and then to Colorado. So I've been back and forth, but really in Philly through the 70s, 80s, and maybe very early 90s was my scene.
Cool. And then Perry, what about you, man?
Yeah, I mean, I've been here my whole life. I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. But
right.
Yeah,
that's a good place. My wife is Philly suburbs, so not necessarily can't always speak to the music scene there. And she came to the Chicago when she was 17 to go to school and has been here ever since. But she grew up like Chadds Ford area, like Delaware, or right around there. So yeah. So I've visited the city a few times as well and really enjoyed it. Particularly Johnny Brenda's. I went there one time. You guys are probably familiar with that place. I got to see the war on drugs there on New Year's Eve it was a little while, maybe like 7-8 years ago, probably. A little while back. They hadn't quite necessarily exploded in popularity like they have over recent years. It was right around probably like the Slave Ambient album. I think maybe had just come out or was right around there. But it was a cool venue. I loved it. It was really intimate and really cool. But so let's talk a little bit about your experiences growing up. So Craig, you want to tell us maybe about your first show in Philly? What was the venue? What was that like? And then we'll talk about some of the kind of the more famous Philly venues as well, and Live Aid too. So what was your first show that you recollect?
Yeah, my first big rock concert was Queen in 1978, the jazz tour at the Spectrum. I don't know if you know folk, but I saw Harry Chapin with my family a few weeks before that, which was great. But when you think of a concert, it was Queen in 78, I guess.
Oh, damn. The peak of their powers too, really,
Yeah. That was Bicycle Race Fat Don't Stop Me Now, and hadn't quite hit the game yet, so hadn't had their number ones. They were hungry. It was great. It was amazing.
I bet. Jesus. Wow. And that was at the Spectrum as well, which is demolished now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It was that was like here in Chicago, like Allstate Arena, and then when the United Center was built. But in Philly, they were built in the same complex. So for a few years, you had that and the new one, First Union, whatever they're called now, Wells Fargo Center, and then they finally got rid of it.
And the baseball stadium's right there too, right?
Yes, so is the football.
Okay. Oh, okay. Right.
So the Eagles and Phillies used to be at the Vet together, and then they built separate stadiums for each of them right across the parking lot from each other, and that's on the spot I think where JFK Stadium was. And then there's three stadiums in that complex now.
Okay. All right. And the Flyers and the Sixers share a joint.
Exactly.
Then, right. Okay. Cool. Perry, what about you, man? What were some of your earliest Philly music memories?
Well, I went to a couple like bigger concerts when I was in, I guess, like 6th grade, but they were in like Camden because that's where.
Oh, okay. In Jersey, yeah.
A bigger venue that we would have shows for like Philly. Everybody from Philly would have to go there. Mm-hmm. And then the first concert I ever went to, my dad took me to see Ringo Starr and his all-star band, but that was in Delaware. So
okay.
I guess my first couple concerts, and then I saw Hall & Oates when I was really young, but that was in Atlantic City. So all my Philly concerts were not in Philly. But then probably around 7th or 8th grade, I started going to like local shows and seeing like local bands play at a bowling alley or, wherever, with local shows, people would put them on wherever you could possibly play music pretty much.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of it's at a bowling alley.
Very cool. So yeah, absolutely. Anything that can become a venue, absolutely. So Craig, then taking us in, Queen was your first show in '78. Obviously, sounds fantastic at the height of, certainly as I mentioned, at the height of their powers. Took us into the '80s, right? And then, so what are some of the shows you saw early '80s?
Huge bands in Philly. Genesis was always huge. There was I was thinking about that. There was this going to the Spectrum, especially between that and JFK, just a series of like Genesis and Van Halen and George Thorogood, who was amazing. I'll never forget that at huge venues. Billy Squier. I mean, it was like
nice.
It was just a time period, and there was Bowie, of course. I wouldn't say of course, but Bowie, a real Philly favorite. So it was like this kind of like cycle that you would go, like for my friends and I don't know, over maybe 3-4 months, at least once, if not twice a month, maybe 3, for these big stadium shows. This is sort of my high school days, so this is like 80 through 84, 85.
So you kind of saw a transitioning Genesis, right? Going to 3 members, kind of, right? Sort of Duke, kind of the Abacab, right around there. Or?
I think Abacab was my first, and then I saw them at the Spectrum a few times, and then they played the Vet. It was either Vet or JFK, but I think.
Oh damn, big show.
And and that was a story actually. When they were in town for that, I was working at a sporting goods store in Philly, and Mike Rutherford came in to get something, and back then credit cards, you swipe them, you had carbon. Yeah. So I stole the copy of his credit card with his signature, and I now have it with my Duke album. So
nice. That's awesome.
That's great.
Were you guys able to fit him in? If I remember correctly, Mike Rutherford's like 6'8" or something, isn't he? Like really tall? I mean,
I don't remember what he got, but some dude was like, Craig, oh my God, and so I'm like, cool, I'll take care of him, and then I just slid the carbon copy right in my pocket, and now it's at home. So I don't know.
Awesome.
I don't think it'll get anything on eBay, but you never know.
Yeah, right.
That's awesome.
Yeah, tall guy, man, too. Like I said, he could have played for the Sixers. But good stuff, man. And then so 84 right wraps around, like that's sort of you're into high school right around there, right?
High school. I graduated high school in 84.
Okay.
And 85 we start seeing Rush and other bands. I mean, just keeps going.
Nice. So you saw Van Halen first era with Roth, right?
Yeah, I saw it on the 1984 tour, and
nice.
And Mark Anthony, I think, had his bass was like shaped like a Jack Daniels bottle.
Nice.
If I remember correctly.
Yeah.
What?
Michael Anthony.
Michael Anthony. You said Mark Anthony, right? Right.
Yeah, that's other music.
Somebody's got to stick up for Michael Anthony.
Right? I'm kidding, man. he got wolf-ganged.
Well, no,
anyway.
it was like a golden period for arena and stadium rock.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It was like they were fighting back. The punks came and they sort of not mocked arena rock, but they kind of pushed it away. And then arena rock, the Who were doing one of their farewell tours. Yeah. And then they're playing. I think the Clash opened for the Who.
You saw him with the. I remember you told me that before. You saw him with the Clash open. That was in like '82-ish, right around there.
And so, and Bowie is now, he's got his Let's Dance album out when I'm in high school. So it's this great period of kind of refinding stadium rock. Boston is releasing one of their comeback albums around then. So it was kind of like, okay, you guys kicked us when we were down arena rock, and now we're taking over again. Jethro Tull the Kinks were still touring. So these were great times.
Kind of a, if I remember correctly, sort of a Renaissance period for or sort of a rejuvenated period for the Kinks in the mid '80s. Like they got popular again. If I remember correctly.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm hogging up the conversation here. So,
no.
That's why we have you on.
They had the Come Dancing
right.
Rejuvenated them. And one of the times I saw them, Tommy Shaw of Styx, he had just left them, and he was the opening act, but every song he did was a Styx song.
Sure.
So it was like watching, for not the Dennis DeYoung songs, thankfully. So these are like tours where you're getting the opening act, and you're like, yeah, this could go on for 2 hours, as opposed to like, let's get rid of them. So it was great stuff. Great
Tommy
time.
Shaw opening for the Kinks. Interesting.
I don't know if they were maybe they were on the same label.
I don't know. I don't know if you guys have seen Tommy Shaw lately. He looks like one of the Real Housewives of Orange County with a goatee. I don't know if you've seen him lately. No. He's like mildly attractive, right? But like he looks like
looks
one of the
good in a ball gown.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean that. He's a good looking man, but like if you see him, you're like, whoa, like he looks like your sort of tan Orange County mom. It's just when we get done with this episode, just Google image Tommy Shaw 2018, and you'll see what I mean. But anyway, still got long flowing hair. I don't know. But well, shit, man. Let's just go right to 1985 then, because that's right about where you left off. One of the biggest, pretty much the biggest concert of the decade comes to Philadelphia. I didn't research the backstory enough to see why they chose Philly over New York. Did anybody get to look at that, or over LA or any other location? I mean, it's cool that they selected Philly, but do you know the story behind it?
I was just like, does anyone else? I was just reading about it too. Basically, Geldof wanted Shea Stadium, and they were having problems. They were having problems getting that. I don't know if it had to do with MLB, and that's right near LaGuardia Airport, so that's good. And then when they couldn't get that, they tried I think the Meadowlands was built. It said North Jersey, so it must have been the Meadowlands. And the NFL was giving them problems. So now the choices were L.A., but that wasn't going to sync up well with England. And Philly, which Bob Geldof had no context of, like the roots of like Chubby Checker and American Bandstand and Frankie Avalon, or Philly as the birthplace of America. And they were just like, they're giving it to us for free. And it's the largest stadium on the East Coast. It's over 100,000 people, the old JFK. And so he said, eventually, okay. But we had always heard in a positive way that, it's because it was the largest stadium on the East Coast. But then there was a documentary and an interview with Bob Geldof, and he was like, I didn't know anything about fucking Philly. Just
you can cuss, yes.
Yeah. But that ended up being why.
Free always helps sway the vote.
Yeah, God.
I also heard he didn't want or know about the Hooters, and they were the opener.
Mm-hmm.
And there was like I don't know if it was controversy, but there was like a whole thing about that, because he was like, who are these guys, whatever, and they were like, no, they're in Philly, like this is going to be a big deal, I think. So they opened the whole thing.
Yeah, the Philly promoter, Larry, I'm not sure if it's Magid or Magid, he pushed for it. And then, I mean, this is all over the internet, but the irony is, he was like, I don't know these guys. And there was an interview on Rolling Stone where he's like, I don't know who the hell these guys are. And then about 25 years later, he opened for the Hooters in Germany.
Wow.
And Eric Bazillion, I was reading the interview. He was like, "Yeah, we didn't really treat him that great." But
they didn't get to eat any of the catered food or anything.
Changing room.
Right.
Karma.
Wow. I have to imagine Bob Geldof didn't sign off on all the acts that played. I can't imagine Bob Geldof's a big REO Speedwagon fan, right? I'm just guessing,
Well, and that was like that, and that's like right at the end before Gary Richrath got kicked out of the band,
right?
And so it's like pure coked up era REO Speedwagon.
Yeah.
Like Kevin Cronin has like 3 cans of Aquanet in his hair, and he's got like a glitter suit on. And, it's just. Yeah, it's
the role of the changes, man. Brian Wilson comes out and does backing vocals.
Oh yeah, like Carl, they're like the whole Beach Boys,
their kids
and a bunch
too.
of little kids.
Yeah. I'm touched. Well, so take us, Craig. I mean, you were there, man. Obviously it was crowded and hot, but what else do you recall, man? I mean, what was the anticipation like?
I remember hearing about it. I was visiting. I was in San Diego when it was announced, visiting a friend who was going to UCSD. And I heard it announced. I was like, "Holy crap! I got to get to this thing." And Philly, we kind of. I think Perry knows this attitude. Philly sort of. Unfortunately, they always feel like we're kind of second-class citizens, and when something good happens, there must be a bad reason for it. I always say this, getting to baseball, but when the Phillies lost their 10,000th game, and they were like the first sports franchise, like people in Philly were like, "Do we celebrate this? Do we have a parade? We're first at something here." But like, we're happiest to be like the best losers. So when that was announced in Philly, it was like, oh my God. And so the day came, and if you were, I'm 51, so I could say I was in college then, and it was such a time. It was so exhilarating, and places like Philly itself. I don't think we had MTV yet when cable was making its way throughout. Philly, all the suburbs did, and I would visit people out in the suburbs, and you would see videos by the Hooters actually, but Philly itself didn't have it. So the energy of MTV we knew, but not really. So this concert's built, and we got general admission seats. I remember we're at the very back of the sort of the horseshoe. If you look at JFK on the floor, but at the very, very back of the horseshoe. I was thinking today, I can't remember who the hell I went with. I just can't. I'm like. I might even put on Facebook where any of you, the people I went with. Like I remember
find them.
I remember the T-shirt. I remember all that, but I can't remember who the hell I went with. And so it was, it was brutally hot. It was packed with people. The ongoing vibe was always, this is our Woodstock. This is our Woodstock. That was
sure.
Like,
that's fair.
It had this good cause to it, and that was sort of like the vibe. The highlight waiting for it, I think, for a lot of people was the Zeppelin reunion, because so many of the great bands were in England. That's not to say, Tom Petty or CSNY or those people who played in Philly weren't great, but I think it was the Zeppelin reunion that was like, holy shit, we're getting this. And of course the expectation that Springsteen was going to show up magically on his white horse, and he never did, of course.
Right.
So I think that was the buzz as it went on. And then early on we weren't linked with England. And then at a certain point when it got linked and it was clear, and then we were going on TV and everything was clear, the energy really, really like shot up at that point.
Very nice. Yeah.
Zeppelin performances?
What, Per?
I literally posted today a clip of the Zeppelin performance because they played with Phil Collins on drums.
Yeah.
And it is one of the worst I love Led Zeppelin.
It is. It's awful.
It's one of the worst performances. Like, the vocals are bad, the mix is bad, the drums are bad. Like, they didn't. I think Phil Collins played on like Robert Plant's solo record or something like that. They brought him in like, oh, this is a friend of mine. He's a great drummer. He can do it. And I think they were planning on like not doing as much as they ended up doing, and it was just so bad. Could you think of
I think there was a lot of coke involved in that one.
Yeah.
Reunion, and then that's what came of it.
Like, and it's a lot easier now to go back and watch the footage on it because, you know, in hindsight, you can tell, there was a lot of coke involved. And then I mentioned before we started recording, I'm a union stagehand now. So to me, watching these videos of the performances, it's like a logistical nightmare. To me, it's like each band is getting like 2 or 3 songs, and then they're having to transition to new sound guys, to new bands. And so, like, a lot of the videos, the sound seems like it was awful. In your experience, how was the sound the day of the show?
Well, you know, I remember at the concert, you know, the energy was there, but the sound, especially that, you know, it's 1985, so especially then the sound at these outdoor concerts was really just sort of growing. So I don't think I realized Zeppelin was quite as bad as they were. I mean, I'm sure I had a couple cocktails in me. But
I would just be so awestruck. You know what I mean?
Right? I think that's what it was. And I think Phil Collins, but I think also like Tony Thompson.
Tony Thompson. He played with him too. Yeah, it was a double drummer thing.
Yeah.
They went Allman Brothers style that day.
Yeah. And so I don't think I realized that it was so bad because I was so like, I can't believe what I'm witnessing kind of thing. But then, you know, when they released the Live Aid 25th anniversary video, the Zeppelin wouldn't allow their set on there. They just were
with good reason.
They put out something else afterwards, and the proceeds went to the famine relief. They were like, but we can't. But of course, the magic of YouTube, you can see almost anything.
Right. Yeah. I also recommend, if you guys haven't watched it, sorry, Levi, there's an interview that Alan Hunter from MTV conducts after their performance, and like Plant and Page just hate each other at that point. Like Page is just wasted, and Plant is just, you know, he's talking up his new album, you know.
It's like a big log.
Right. Yeah. He's just going on, and just Page is just glaring at him. It's great.
Like, you ruined the band, right?
Yeah, they hate each other.
So, what I was going to say was the real winner of the whole thing, in my mind, is Patti LaBelle's management team. Because somehow Patti LaBelle got put on after Zeppelin, Phil Collins, Eric Clapton, CSNY, Duran Duran. Like,
they threw a Philly artist a bone there. You know?
Yeah. And
well, like, Philly wants Patti LaBelle to be like our version of Aretha. She's kind of like the poor man's Aretha. Oh, look at Harry's like not buying it, or no?
Dude, she's amazing though, and I think that she won't get the credit, and that's fine. But also, that's like, we really hold on to her, like, you know.
Oh, I love Patti LaBelle, but I just think it's amazing that her management got her that slot in the show. Yeah.
The billing sequence is interesting. Yeah.
Well, and somebody would get like, you know, 8 minutes for their set, and then I watched like something that was on Showtime or something where they do these like short stories with reenactments and all this stuff, and I think like Boomtown Rats had like 18 minutes, but like Status Quo or somebody had like 6 minutes, you know, whatever it was, and obviously Geldof took more time, but I mean, that's how the whole show probably was. Like, you could only see Queen for what you said. I mean, I think they played for 20 minutes or something.
Yeah, I think they're
20 minutes. What is that?
20 for each. I think it was supposed to be that, but you look at the set list. I mean, they of course did that great medley of all songs. They play "Hammer to Fall," the whole song, but everything else. I do remember when they came on though. But then other bands you see do like 2 songs, 3 songs. It really is kind of a mix. Zeppelin did 3 songs. One of them was "Stairway," and I forgot what the others were.
They did a whole lot of love and something
rock and roll,
I think.
Yeah. So it was this like great. It was that great mix. But yeah, I think Patti LaBelle, did she bring on Teddy Pendergrass, or did he come on with someone else? They wheeled him on. It was the first time after his accident that he performed, I think.
He was on with Ashford and Simpson.
He was out with Ashford and Simpson. So kind of getting that Philly the Philly soul thing
Sure.
there.
I just saw a documentary, by the way, on Teddy Pendergrass, and when it comes out, I recommend everybody sees it. It's mind-blowing. It's incredible.
Nice.
Cool.
He's a very important Philly musician to me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I spun about 3 or 4 of his records in preparation, like his debut up until like his early '80s stuff, and yeah,
Well,
absolutely
he was
agreed.
originally with like Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, was it? Or
Yeah.
who was he with?
Yeah, Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. So they were the Blue Notes, and he was the lead singer. He was singing all the hits, and Harold Melvin told the management, or maybe Gamble and Huff, like, hey, we all talked about it. We want to call the band Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. He came back. They all found out. They're like, so everybody thought that the voice you heard was Harold Melvin, but it was Teddy Pendergrass. So he went on his own and was like, oh, I'll be fine. And obviously he was, and nobody knows any Harold Melvin songs up.
Sure. Well, let's transition to that because I could talk about Live Aid all day, but we could have a whole episode on that. But the sound of Philadelphia is relatively new to me. Like, granted, I know obviously I know Patti LaBelle and Teddy Pendergrass and a few of the people, but I heard it a few years ago. Like, I put on the Delphonics "La La Means I Love You," and I hadn't really explored it much. I knew the songs were in the movie Jackie Brown. I don't know if you remember but I just, for me, like, I didn't have anything against it. I just kind of wrote that stuff off. When I was younger, it just didn't appeal to me. And then I heard "La La Means I Love You," a few years ago, and it just knocked me out. I mean, it is so well done. It's so well produced, and it's like just the fact that Philly had like sort of its own version of Motown, but it was funkier. It was kind of sexier as well. I was kind of thinking, like, if I could characterize it, like, Motown was like getting to first base. Like, the sound of Philadelphia was going all the way. All right, so
that's sealed the deal music.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I don't know how much you guys listen to that stuff, and I know that it's steeped in Philly's musical history, but I just think it's just really cool that just Philly had such an important piece of the '70s there. It's just neat. It's great tunes.
Well, it was, and it was so like Sigma Sound Studios was so influential. I mean, Bowie records the Young Americans album there.
Oh, okay.
Springsteen meets Bowie while Bowie is recording Young Americans, and takes a bus down to Philly to meet him there. And then that doesn't include things like Stevie Wonder came in to perform, things like that. But Perry, do you know more about like the history of Sigma Sound and Philly International?
I mean, not the more of the history necessarily, just stories I've heard of. Every musician came through there and wanted a piece of it, and obviously Hall & Oates. Like, I saw John Oates a couple months ago, and he performed.
Oh,
nice. It's like, we used to go down the street and record. This is like, meanwhile, I went to a show at the Truck, which is another venue I grew up going to in Philly, and recently I was there, and I parked my car. And I look, and there's like one of those plaques. It's like Sigma Sound, and I'm looking around. I'm like, wait, where was it again? And I had to look it up on my phone because it's just a blacked out window covered in graffiti. It's nothing now. It's like something that produced. I mean, even just to say David Bowie, which wasn't even from Philly, but like the fact that it got that far. It's crazy. And everybody, all the Philly.
Yeah,
was all in, like Motown, it was in house. Everything was
sure. Yeah, but they had the band. It's an acronym. Like, they had some dudes that played with them that like basically served as the backing band for a lot of those acts.
MFSB.
Yeah, MFSB. That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
Mother, father, sister, brother.
Yeah, they did the Soul Train theme as well. MFSB did. Yeah. But go ahead, Levi.
In my searching, I'm a record digger as well. So in my searching for 45s, anytime I come across Philly International or TSOP, the Sound of Philadelphia, like if I've never heard of them, I know they're going to be bangers. I usually just buy them because it's like, you know what I mean. And they just like Gabe I want to reiterate, they were so well produced. A lot of those records, man. Those guys don't get a lot of credit where they should. And if I was doing like a soul song Mount Rushmore, like If You Don't Know Me by Now by Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes would probably be on it.
Yeah. I mean, so and then they get I'm going to say credit, although some will say blame, for really originating disco.
Yeah.
Tramps Disco Inferno. And I remember that. I remember my sister and Perry's sister, my sister's 8, them coming home, and she's 8 years older than me. Oh, your mom. Jesus Christ. I'm sorry, Perry. I remember Michelle and Beth, coming home singing that, and going, at the time they were then starting to go to discos, quite literally. But I mean, that's like the pinnacle of just dirty and raunchy and
like Philly.
Really good stuff. Was that fair?
I said just like Philly, dirty and raunchy.
And gritty, of course.
It's appropriate.
You guys know the place far better than I do, but it always reminded me of a city that kind of had one foot in the Midwest and one foot in the Northeast. Is that kind of a little bit or sort of?
No, we hate you now.
Okay, all right, never mind. All right.
No, that would be Pittsburgh.
Okay, guys. Jeez, all right. It's the best place on earth, all right? Sorry.
No, it's not that. I think Philly, they're like, I think at times, because they compare themselves to New York so much, and there's the whole history of the Philly skyline that Perry knows, like the height and why in City Hall, that it was like always considered like a big small town, although it was the 4th and 5th, depending on when, biggest city in the country. Sure. It's just very it's very Philly centric, really. I mean, people from will go to New York, but we love Philly. We always have a rivalry with things from New York, and it's really, I mean, Perry and I both love Philly. I mean, I love it. But I don't think it's kind of one foot in the Midwest. I think it's very just enclosed, I guess. It's not the way I'm looking for, but like one of the things I say is that almost every band from Philly has a song about Philly or mention Philly, whether it's the Dead Milkmen, whether it's Hall & Oates, whether it's the Hooters, whether it's G Love and Special Sauce.
Marah.
Are you guys familiar with them? We've talked them up a lot on this show. I don't even know if they're still around, but kids. Yeah, Marah. Yeah.
One of the guys in the band follows me on Instagram, and I didn't know. And I looked the other day, and I was like, "Whoa, this guy's in Marah."
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like a Philly band that's been around forever.
We've devoted a lot of minutes to them in prior episodes, so I didn't want them to like hog up this one, but yeah, they're definitely probably my favorite Philly band.
Oh, that's
Kids in Philly is I think it's one of the best records of the last 20 years.
Oh, Ween is like.
Oh, Ween is Philly. Yeah.
Like New Hope, really, I guess, but very. I mean, they have songs about Philly. That Philly's their city.
Yeah.
New Hope can only go so far.
Right. And then you got the root. Then you get the Roots, Will Smith, and Boyz II Men. They all have Philly songs and Philly references.
Yeah,
it's great. So that's sort of like the Philly pride. And sometimes they're a little tongue in cheeky, but they're there.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of local pride. It's great to see. Another guy that, if I could just hop back to the sound of Philadelphia, that is new to me, but obviously he's an old act. I really liked Billy Paul. I don't know if you guys have heard much of his stuff.
Me and Mrs. Jones.
Yeah, right, that one. But he was kind of politically conscious. He was sort of the
Marvin Gaye-ish.
Yeah, he had that vibe to him, and really smart lyrics, so I highly recommend any of Billy Paul's 70s stuff, starting with Ebony Woman on. It's all just solid gold, man.
I think Lou Rawls also records there. He's got that.
Yeah. And then, even though they're not from there, I think they're from Ohio. The OJs were on Philadelphia International.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So they're commonly associated with Philly, even though they're technically, I think, an Ohio band. Or at least that's where it started.
I got to look this up. I don't know if the Stylistics, but there's like a Philly band who didn't actually record, but they didn't actually record in Philly. I can't remember which band it was, but that was kind of confusing. I just found out they weren't recording the stuff in Philly, but it came out on a different label or something. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Stylistics are great too.
I love
Yeah, their debut album is fantastic. There's another one too. They didn't quite get as much attention as Delphonics or Stylistics or Patti LaBelle, of course, but Blue Magic is really good too. I don't know if you guys have ever. Yeah. Yeah, their album from '74 is really tight. It's definitely the quintessential sound of Philadelphia. So yeah, check out Blue Magic if you haven't heard them. Really good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many lost bands too. I mean, like between even punk, but there's like all these hard rock bands that came out of Philly that didn't quite get as far as they probably could have, but were opening for huge bands and stuff.
Okay.
And, Bang is from Philly.
Okay, yeah, I've heard Bang.
They were considered the American, our version or our answer to Black Sabbath, but they didn't get much further than I think 3 records.
Yeah, yeah.
The records are amazing, and they started playing shows again, and then there's a band called Thunder and Roses that like nobody knows about, I guess, but Nirvana, there's like a random Nirvana live cover of one of their songs that you could find, which is crazy. But there's just so many Philly bands that kind of went under the radar still, even with the internet, that nobody seems to know about. And I mean, it's just such a big city compared to, I think people don't think about how big it actually is, especially with music. I mean, I think there was probably a period where people were coming here, and they still do, to try to make it, I'll move to Philly, that's where so much good music is coming from, and they try to make it big, or they're from here and they try to make it, I don't know. It's never ending, I guess.
Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the kind of the more recent acts to emerge from Philadelphia. Perry, I know that you've done some work for Kurt Weill, so a great artist that's really made a name for himself over the last few years. Played with the War on Drugs on a record, and then it's kind of, I think we've mentioned on this show before, it's not that often that like great musicians sort of split up and then create equally great music, in my opinion, which is like, wow, like Kurt Weill leaves the War on Drugs. He makes this amazing record and making amazing records. And the same thing happens to the War on Drugs. So yeah, that scene, and I don't know if Steve Gunn is from Philadelphia or not. I don't.
From Lansdowne, which is where Kurt's from also.
Okay.
Which is 15 minutes from my house.
Close by. Okay, cool. Yeah, he's great as well. I really like, and Levi, I know you're keen on him too. Steve Gunn as well.
Yeah, well, I had actually I had never heard of the guy, and I was at a Goodwill here in Illinois and stumbled upon one of his records. I'm trying to think, what was it called? Way Out.
Yeah. Right. It's got the kind of like a trash heap kind of on
the
cover of it.
Yeah, it's like a trash heap. And so I bought it blindly and ended up really liking it. So yeah.
All really good guitar work among like all 3 of those acts too. I know Steve Gunn has played with Kurt Weill, and it's kind of a circle of musicians. Well, Perry, tell us, I mean, like anybody that maybe we don't know about that you're really keen on lately, that you've heard that maybe not as recognized as some of those names that we just mentioned. Who's local or in the area?
So many because I play music too, so all my friends, every single one of my friends is in a band.
Sure.
I'm in multiple bands, and we play with. I mean, I wouldn't even know where to start, honestly. I mean, I like Kurt Weill. He's a bigger
sure.
name, of course.
Well, here, while you're thinking about that, I'll throw out some that I discovered this week and listened to for the first time, and you can tell me if I'm on the right track. Hurry was a pretty good band. Kind of. What's that?
Oh no, shit! Oh wow.
Yeah,
Would you say?
I've actually been in a band with 2 of those members of Hurry, so they're good friends of mine, and one of my bands played a show with them last 2 weeks.
Funny. No, I really enjoyed listening to him this week. That's awesome. TJ Kong and the Atomic Bomb. I enjoyed their new record. It's kind of like the romp Americana rockabilly sort of thing. And Japanese Breakfast, which is kind of some indie pop. Michelle Zauner, I think is how you say her name. Those were just a few that I stumbled upon this week.
Yeah, to explain how, I guess, incestuous the Philly music scene is, like I said, I was in a band with 2 members of Hurry, and then you mentioned TJ Kong. My band in high school used to play with his old band, and then Japanese Breakfast, Michelle used to be in a band with my old band's drummer. Like, everybody in Philly knows. It's crazy.
That's funny. Right. And and you mentioned how like so much music comes out of there. And while listening to some of these records these past couple of weeks, it made me. I immediately thought, wow, this is like a really high per capita like quality music coming out of Philadelphia. It was really impressive.
I think a lot of people don't realize how many colleges are in Philly. I think either other than Boston or outside of Boston, like the metro area is one of the top 2 or 3 in the country. So there's so many younger artists, and more people are staying there, staying in Philly now, as opposed to moving back out. So I think there's always kind of like an influx. I mean, there's 20 colleges literally in Philly and right around it. So I think that's part of it too. There's a younger population that people just don't realize a lot of times.
Yeah, the music scene will kind of keep replenishing itself, sort of, absolutely. Craig, I know that we'll just hop back for a second to the Hooters, because like even my wife, who I wouldn't say knows their music that well, was like, oh yeah, the Hooters, like there's like so like local legends almost, it sounds like,
Well, what it was from what I remember, so they their first indie album in Philly was called Amore, and it was brilliant. And it sold. This is 1983-ish, give or take. It sells 100,000 copies of an indie thing in the Philly area. So, and in Philly there was a radio station. It's still around, but WMMR was the was everything. It was the rock station, and like we had that I remember, no punk or like bands like Depeche Mode or The Cure or what have you. There was no outlet for them. Philly was a classic rock station, and you needed to be embraced by WMMR and WYSP to a lesser extent. So the Hooters were, and that Amore album is so raw. It's full of energy. It's not nearly as polished as their first mainstream album.
Nervous Night,
And Nervous Night comes out, and I'll never forget. I think each band member had their own kind of like color. If you see like the videos or whatever, it wasn't like New Kids on the Block, but like and it was very polished and very and about, I'd say probably around 4 of the songs from Amore show up on that album, and really I think overproduced. I mean, it's sign of the times, at that point. And they sell out the Tower Theater, and I'm not sure if they play the Spectrum or not. I mean, I saw them at the Tower, which would be like the Chicago Theater, I guess.
Okay.
In Upper Darby. And what's kind of funny is after that first album, and they're so associated with what's the technical name for the instrument, the Hooter,
Well, they play the melodica.
Right, the
okay.
And they're so associated with that, but like their next album was like a mandolin album. Like by the time you get to their second and their third albums, they're starting to get almost Peter, Paul, and Mary do backup vocals on one of their songs that they're.
I did not know that. All right.
And, they're writing for Joan Osborne, the huge hit they're writing for Cyndi Lauper and Joan Osborne. And as they go on, I kind of feel like as they get mature, they're not nearly as MTV friendly anymore, but their music is much more mature. And by the time you get to that last period of the end of the 80s, early 90s, their stuff is pretty great.
I thought that record after Nervous Night was really strong. I forgot what it's called. It's got black and white cover, black and white photo of them on the cover. Okay, yeah. I that was like you said, not as probably as commercially viable as Nervous Night, but I think more mature lyrically and everything like that.
Just to give you my big Hooters anecdote, I think I told you about this once before. I'm not sure. I did as an undergrad, I was studying abroad. I did a semester abroad, and I go to Germany, and I go to the Berlin Wall. And back then, the wall was up, and you could go to East Germany for the day, and it was like and it's really cool. So I go and I come back, and I see this guy. It's David Usikinen. I don't know if I'm saying it properly. The drummer from the Hooters, and I'm like, what the? So I yell to him. I never met him before, but I'm like, yo, we go to Temple. Because Temple. Hey, cool, man. What are you doing here? And we're like, well, we're just here. He's like, we're playing at, I think the bar was called the Latin Quarter. It's like, we're playing at the Latin Quarter. Why don't you go? So my friends and I go. We see the Hooters in concert in Berlin on a whim. Like that. What? And I mean, it was awesome. I mean, the Germans really through the 90s and thousands loved the Hooters, but it was like a crazy thing, it was just crazy, and it's something that you always remember for sure.
Nice. Very nice.
Wait, so can I
No, go for it, man.
Wait, so, the Hooters wrote for Cyndi Lauper because Robert Hazard wrote Girls Just Want to Have Fun. He's also a Philly.
Right, and I think it's Rob Hyman co-wrote Time After Time, like the most beautiful song of hers, and Eric Bazillion writes One of Us for Joan Osborne, which is a humongous hit.
Yeah.
So they're really involved in that sort of scene, and so yeah. And Rob, is it Rob Chertoff or Ron Chertoff? The producer for the Hooters was the producer for the
Rick Chertoff.
Rick Chertoff.
Chertoff. Okay. Yeah.
It's the producer for those guys.
The Hooters,
and you were right. It was Hyman. Hyman co-wrote Time After Time. I never knew that.
Oh, yeah. Wow. The Hooters to me is almost like synth ska. You know what I mean? Because it's got like a jig to it. Like it's. But at the same time, it's definitely a product. At least Nervous Night is definitely a product of the '80s. The production value is enjoyable but dated. So yeah, it's just an interesting sound, and one that like even like REM kind of had elements of that, but like they were doing it in a much less polished way, I don't know. It's really they occupy a really unique corner of the '80s, I think the Hooters do.
And that's why I say if you can and it's easy enough these days to hear like some of those songs in the first iteration on Amore.
Yeah.
One sounds like a bar band and one sounds like a synth wannabe Duran Duran-ish band. And
sure.
And it's like it's so extreme, some of the songs. But yeah, they were a huge, even now I think they're playing down the shore in some bars again around Philly.
I mean, they still play. Yeah, I mean, Eric Bazillion produced one of my friend's records. Like,
nice. Sweet.
But yeah, like All You Zombies, the two different versions of that, it's like light years.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
It's weird to hear the original when you know the one that's been played on the radio forever.
Yeah. So the Hooters do I think that we thought they might end up being bigger than they were, but they certainly captured like a moment in time.
Absolutely. One guy I'd like to mention who we haven't yet, who I have to, you guys would know more than me how closely associated he gets with Philly, but I know he's from there, and I don't know if musically he cut his teeth there. I assume he did. Is Todd Rundgren is from Philly as well. He's from Upper Darby. Okay, yeah. He deserves a mention because he's one of those guys as well. Like for me, I gravitated towards classic rock in high school, but he wasn't really on my radar. And he's great. I don't know if you guys are fans or not, but yeah, he seems like he should be mentioned among the important Philly acts as well. I don't know how, like I said, if he's more closely associated with another area, but that's he would be on my Philly Mount Rushmore. I've really appreciated his music over the last few years, particularly everything in Utopia as well. So
yeah, I think when like you put together, at least in my head, like Philly bands and Philly artists from that era, he comes to mind as a Philly guy. Like I say, I think Hall & Oates is sort of the pinnacle of Philly at that point, and then
he produced the Hall & Oates record too, I believe. I think he did War Babies.
I think so.
You listen to
okay.
It, we can curse. You said right, like
yeah, absolutely.
War Babies, it's really fucking weird for a Hall & Oates record, and it gets weirder towards the end. And the first time I heard it, I thought like, whoa, this is crazy. I wonder if Todd Rundgren had anything to do with it, because. And of course he does. Like,
yeah.
Well, no, it takes a really unique individual to produce that record,
right?
Straight Up by Badfinger, Bad Out of Hell by Meatloaf.
Shit, he did Dark Side of the Moon.
New York Dolls. He did that New York Dolls self-titled record.
He's a talented fucker, man. I mean, and a guy that obviously like music fans know him, but like I don't think necessarily the casual FM classic rock dude knows him.
I want to bang his drum all day. That's all anybody knows.
I mean, people don't know him beyond those hit singles, and he's great, man. Yeah, absolutely. The first couple Hall & Oates records before he intervened, they kind of sound like Seals and Croft or Loggins and Messina or something like that, Yeah, and I like Seals and Croft and Loggins and Messina. Nothing wrong with that, all right? So
I think Abandoned Luncheonette is one of the greatest. I think that's considered by many. Do you know you don't have that pair? Or no, you don't like it.
I said, oh my god, no, it's amazing. It's
an amazing album.
Yeah,
that's the one from like 73 or so.
No, it's got Rich Girl, right?
It's got She's Gone.
Oh, She's Gone. Yeah.
And is it Las Vegas Turnaround?
I think.
What?
Sarah Smile on the fourth record.
I don't know.
The silver cover with both of their faces on.
I think you're right. Rich Girl's the one on that one, right?
No.
There's one album cover where they're wearing a lot of makeup and they look like the New York Dolls.
That was done by the same guy who created Ziggy Stardust.
Really?
Really?
Oh.
Yeah, the same guy who created the Ziggy Stardust like persona and makeup and all that was the guy who did that, because it's the unique thing. It was one of the first like chrome foil album covers.
Yeah, that record's incredible. Chamelea's on that. That's the record starts off with Camellia. That's like one of my favorite Hall & Oates records, I guess.
Well, their first record, which is like just has some oats on the cover of it, right?
Well,
or like
it's called
Whole Oats.
Whole Oats, and that was originally supposed to be the band name, and then I think last minute they were like, no, you just put your names on it. You'll call the album this, which was obviously a good move. But,
it's cool. I think they've gotten a lot more respect in recent years than they had, back in their heyday, like critically. I feel like I've always liked them, but I mean, I feel like they've gotten their due in recent years, which they've deserved, I think.
They didn't do themselves any favor with all their goofy ass videos. God bless them. I love Hall & Oates, but if you look back, the She's Gone video is great. If you guys have, if anybody who's listening out there, if you've never seen the She's Gone video, it's priceless.
I think that they have this part before like Maneater and I Can't Go For That, right? They're more kind of Philly blues soul stuff, which is like what we're talking about, Sarah Smile. Then the MTV 80s come along and things are glossy and they become, I don't know if it's still true, but they had the most number one songs by a duo in history.
I think they still probably hold that. Yeah.
I mean, it's like boom, 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 boom. And then like at Live 8, they brought in I think the Temptations or
David Ruffin.
Yeah. To really try to, there they are at their peak of their popularity, trying to, sell these to people. And then time went on, and then they kind of not fell, but sort of that popularity went away. And then you hear some of those songs like Maneater and whatever played acoustically, or the way they do it now when they're not so like synthy, and they're amazing. They're amazing songs when you hear them that way.
Yeah.
And then, do you guys watch live from Daryl's house?
I've seen a few episodes. Yeah.
It's a blast. I mean, it's a blast.
Yeah.
And my wife's like, that's a guy who like can drink shots. She's like,
I'd party with him. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We have a soft spot for them, right?
Oh, I mean, they're one of my all-time favorites. I've seen them. Like I said, it was one of my first concerts I ever saw. But I saw them on July 4th. They played at the Parkway for free. It was like torrential downpours, and I was like, I'm not leaving. I'm staying. I stayed for the whole thing. But the thing, respected and appreciated as a Philly soul band, except for they were white guys doing it and somehow pulling it off. So for the fact that they kind of got it, I think they were really well respected. And then, like Craig was saying, like, I think once Maneater and stuff started coming out, people were like, oh, they're a goofy 80s band, or like a fun 80s band. Not even say goofy, but Maneater was originally written as a reggae song, and there was no version of it, obviously, because Daryl Hall was like, we're not doing that as a reggae song, which is weird because there is a reggae song on the fourth record. But anyway, I saw John Oates recently solo, and he played the reggae version of Maneater, and I was like, I'm enjoying this for what it is now. I'm glad this wasn't the version that came out.
Be a different story for those guys.
It seems like there was a period where they were kind of searching for who they were as artists.
Yeah, definitely. Well, how did they stay relevant after making all that early music the way they did? And then
it's kind of like the Heart phenomenon, when you've got like early Heart, and then the 80s come, and suddenly doing these dreams, and they're all swept away. Shit, and you're like
shoulder pads.
What happened to this band with like this great guitar? Magic Man, and then suddenly they're doing that. And I think it's just, it really is a snapshot of like that moment in time, how bands had if they were going to adapt, including Pat Benatar, if they were going to adapt, there were some significant changes, and you can really see them in bands like that, I think.
Oh yeah, ZZ Top as well.
Aerosmith. ZZ Top went hard for a couple, maybe 2-3 records.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it was probably a thing to keep your record deal too. I mean, it's all these artists that were big in the '70s had to transition to this decade that was totally foreign. And just it was interesting time.
Even Van Halen at that point. When you see David Lee Roth doing Jump versus the first album or two.
Oh sure.
Rush went hard with the synth and all the experimental stuff.
That was one of those concerts I saw on that. I saw Grace Under Pressure tour, and I think that was the first time I saw huge video. Like they had great videos in the background. And it was one of the first times I think I remember seeing a concert that the story was told through those. Also, just as a side note from what you just said.
That's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I got a soft spot for '80s Rush. I like it all. To me, Rush can do no wrong. Damn it.
You don't need to get me started on it.
Barry, I knew you were my people.
When people are like, "Oh, I want to get into Rush, where do I start?" and I say, all you need is the first 12 albums.
Absolutely. That's a perfect band. I mean, 3 dudes. They're all just amazing at their instruments. Gosh. Could be a whole other episode. We have a Canadian episode, so if you guys ever want to check that out, go dig into the archives. We give Rush plenty of love there.
Well, on the Jewish holidays, we listen to Rush for Rosh Hashanah, and
that's awesome.
I don't remember doing that.
I want to make a meme right now with it.
Right. Yeah, give us good material. Well, guys, it's been so much fun to talk about music. Let's switch to baseball for the last little chunk of the show here. Obviously, Craig, you grew up a huge Phillies fan. Perry, I'm not sure, are you a big baseball fan or not necessarily?
I liked it more as a kid. Not that I dislike it, but
sure,
music and art and I mostly just collect T-shirts, honestly. So I have some cool T-shirts, but I don't really. I can't probably don't have much to add to that part of the conversation.
No worries, man. So we'll the bulk of tonight will focus on the music, but Craig, I do want to talk about the Phillies a little bit. So 1980 team, you're around like freshman year of high school ish, right around there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. To me, it's always been weird to see Pete Rose in a Phillies uniform because I know his time there was relatively brief, right? Maybe 2 seasons.
79 to 83.
Right.
Oh, okay, more than I thought.
So,
okay.
So there are 2 World Series in his tenure there. 1 win, 1 loss. So he brought a lot.
He was a difference maker.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of my favorite cards of all time is the 1980 Topps Pete Rose. Because it's just literally it's like no neck or nothing. It's literally just like his head side profile with the killer like 80s hard batting helmet.
Yeah.
And he looks like the guy off the Big League Chew package.
Right. That had to be the inspiration for that character, I would think. So, and then they played the Royals in 80, right? They beat the Royals in 80? Yeah. Okay, so wow, yeah. God, good teams. George Brett then would have been on the Royals at the time. Probably Mookie Wilson. I could be wrong, but yeah. So what? So any memories of the 80s team, of the 1980 team? Excuse me.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, the parade went right past my high school. I mean, everything about it. Just to give context for that period in Philly,
sure,
is that like from 1974 to like 1984 is a golden age in Philly sports. It's probably the first one. The Flyers win their 2 cups and then go to the finals a couple other times. The Sixers, 77, they lose to Portland. And 80, 82, 83, they've got they're in the finals against the Lakers. They win 1. And the Eagles finally reached the Super Bowl. They'd been so horrible. The Jaworski, Vermeil, Howard Carmichael team. So it's this golden age. And then the Phillies, kind of like the Eagles of the 90s, 76, 77, 78. They go to the championship and they lose to the Dodgers. It was in that time though that Bert Hooton got booed off where he got freaked out by the Phillies fans. You guys know that?
Oh yeah.
So 78. And I was at that game. That was awesome. Then the Phillies are like, okay, we need one more guy. So they bring Pete Rose over. It's 79, and it's the first time in 4 years or 3 years they don't win the title. That was the Weir family Pirates year.
Okay.
So 80, everything clicks. And I mean, you've got this team of Boa, Luzinski, Schmidt, of course, Manny Trio, and then Rose is added to the chunk, and then you've got Carlton, of course, as the ace.
Got the MVP and the Cy Young that year,
Yeah. Just incredible. So that team was probably, and the Phillies just historically are the oldest. I mean, we're proud, the oldest single name franchise in sports. I think they originated in 1883, and they've been the Phillies the whole time. They futzed with some other things. So in all that time, the first World Series they win is 1980. I mean, it was like they had never won a series until 19. So the city was just, I mean, we were bonkers for that team. The World Series, that final game, I don't know if you remember, there's a pop-up that Bob Boone was our catcher, and he bobbles, and then Pete Rose swoops in and he catches it before it goes down. I mean, Bob Boone, we hate him for having to give us Aaron Boone. Listen to him on like ESPN.
Aaron fucking Boone.
He fell off my list there anyway, just because of his kids, and that guy's like obnoxious as all hell. But it was just this team, and then it was Tug McGraw as the closer, and it was just such an exciting, exhilarating team. It was even though they had choked before, they had just such confidence. Maybe because they were playing Kansas City, and that Royals team was a really good team, but it wasn't like the issues of we're up against the Yankees, and they beat Houston in this great series to get there. They didn't have to beat the Dodgers again, so it was just a great time to be a Phillies fan, for sure.
A couple episodes ago, we did an episode on 1993, so we talked about the 93 team in detail, and it's like that's a lot of assholes on one team, right? I mean, it's to me, it would have been hard to root for some of those guys. But I guess in retrospect,
I think the DUI to player ratio was like 4.
Right.
So, I do remember that era, by the way. Just to chime in, I was around watching that.
My wife went to one of those games, the '93 World Series. Maybe she might have gone to a couple of them. What was it? Obviously, you had Joe Carter's home run. Did that go to did that go to Game 7?
No, I think that was 6.
6. Okay, man. My wife went to a couple of them. But any highlights for you for that team, Craig? It's an interesting group it's a motley crew.
And that was kind of like the Flyers mascot Gritty. He would have been and we love the Fanatic. We haven't even gotten into the Fanatic, but that team, Harry Callis, our announcer who passed away, that was his favorite team because they were the hardest partying, I mean, when you got Lenny Dykstra, as your premier player, and Darren Dalton, whose wife is the Hooters model at the time, is the team leader.
Yeah, Darren Dalton.
And then you got Croc. I mean, and
Mitch Williams.
Yeah, it was, and they came out of nowhere. I mean, the Phillies had been so bad for a long time at that point, and then they were bad right after for a long time. But
it is remarkable how many years they finished more than 20 games out of first place.
Especially when you look at the 30s and 40s, and you get the Whiz Kids and the great collapse in '64, I think it is. They're just, my father used to say that the Philadelphia A's, he was like, were much more popular. And then they got run out to go to KC. And he's like, and then we were stuck with the Phillies who couldn't win anything. But that 93 team was like lightning in a bottle. And it was so funny. Like when they didn't win it, people were throwing stuff at Mitch Williams' house. I mean, he was getting food. It was dangerous for him to leave the house. It really was. But it was almost like they shouldn't win it. It was like Charlie Brown about to kick that football, and they got so close, and they just didn't. I mean, it was a drunken Charlie Brown.
Right.
They were really beloved. And then this year, I think they celebrated the 10th anniversary in Philly of the World Series.
The 08 team, yeah.
And then whatever it was, the 15th or 25th anniversary, I guess, of the 93 team. And the 93 team didn't get the love that they were expecting as far as it turned out. Maybe because everyone is still in touch with the 08 team, but it was a team that was so much fun to watch. It was a bunch of guys that you knew liked each other, and if they didn't, you knew fights in the dressing room were like they were hardcore fights, and it was just throwback. It was a time that
sure.
We don't. I guess it reminded Philly maybe of the Broad Street Bullies days too, where, we're just gonna break the mold, and it was just a lightning in a bottle. And it was
Dykstra certainly fits that bill.
At the time, I just knew Darren Dalton as the asshole that literally I think was in every pack of baseball cards I bought from like 1985 to like 1992. I swear to God. Like some packs would be like two Darren Daltons. I'd be like, fuck. Yeah, he literally, I swear, he was in almost every pack of cards I bought as a kid.
Was Dale Murphy on that team, Craig?
No, 93? I think he was already gone. He was
already gone? Okay.
Yeah. It was Incaviglia in the outfield, Dykstra, and I forgot who the other was. But I don't think it was Dale Murphy.
You had Mariano Duncan in the infield, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it was good. It was a good lineup. Yeah, Schilling was in the rotation as well, right?
Yep. Before we
well, let me ask you this, Craig. Before, it seems to me like Schmidt is probably the best Philly of all time. I mean, it seems it's. I know maybe it's up for debate. Like, if it's not him, who is it then? I mean, like to me, it's like Schmidt, and then it was like I was looking at their whole history of notable players. It's hard for me to pick the second best. But it seems like Schmidt is the best.
And in Philly, the argument would be Schmidt's the greatest third baseman of all time. I mean, that's the argument, and it's hard to beat that. I mean, I think
Baltimore might have something to say about that.
Who?
Baltimore, Brooks Robinson.
Oh, I know, but we still believe. And Schmidt's relationship with Philly. I mean, the booze and the crap that he got. I mean, he's like the poster boy for the Philly fan who you could be great, but you can't be great enough for. Right. I think of the modern era, you're looking at Schmidt and then probably Carlton. Sure. In that era, I was going back, and you can go back to like Chuck Klein was you can go to early at Delahanty, the early Hall of Famers from
1920s,
90s.
Yeah, Springfield's own Robin Roberts, correct?
Yes,
right,
sir.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, and Richie Ashburn Whitey. I mean, he's probably the most beloved Philly of all time. He was our radio announcer or TV with Harry for a long time. So he's beloved. But I think Schmidt is in his own kind of stratosphere. And then Carlton is, according to many, the greatest, or at the time he was the greatest left-handed pitcher. Things have changed since then. And like I say, and then I think earlier you get those Jim Bunnings, you get the Robin Roberts, you get Dick Allen, who we could talk about a little bit too as the first baseman. And then you get the next generation, and it's up to you, Ryan Howard, if you can throw away the last 4 years when he was struggling to hit 230, that height, when he was those 4 or 5 years, he was hitting 50 homers a year. And, he was
Chase Utley too, man. He would be part of them.
I'd say I think you could put J. Roll in that conversation too. There's MVP. There.
That team. Chase Utley is probably the most beloved of them all, and he sealed it at the victory parade when his great thing was world fucking champions, and that if you like
definitely embrace there.
If you watch it online, like it was just like he just nailed it. He's probably the most beloved, and I think hopefully he'll be a Hall of Famer. His numbers never quite made it to where I think each year it was like, who's going to be the MVP this year, and like Utley's in the conversation, and he never quite made those numbers, but he made that team that he was the face of that team and the work ethic of that team. And then you get Jimmy Rollins, who starts off when the Phillies were really bad, and he's real flashy, and then when the team's really good, he becomes like the leader. He's still's got a great smile, but not like cocky the way he had been. And
charismatic guy, definitely.
Yeah, and then you get Jason Worth and Victorino and such. And then let's we'll have Cole Hamels, and then we'll add Cliff Lee and Halladay the next couple of years. But
Halladay is probably the shoe-in Hall of Famer from that team. I would say the other guys are kind of on the bubble. You just mentioned.
Well, I would say Halladay, but he'll probably go. I guess he'll go in a Blue Jays hat. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I mean, he had the perfect game in the no-hitter with the Phils.
I forget though that he wasn't on the championship team, right?
Oh, he wasn't. He wasn't on the 08 team.
Nope.
He was afterwards. Okay, my bad.
And neither was Cliff Lee.
Right, Cliff Lee was the next year when they lost to the Yankees. I mean, we include him as part of that era, but that team, I think J-Roll winning an MVP as a shortstop, probably deserves. Ryan Howard, again, it depends on what you remember of it and the numbers you look at and how much of his career you care about.
He almost hit 60 home runs his first full season in the big leagues.
Yes, he was rookie year, and he hit he hit over 300 that year too. And then I don't know, eventually he just couldn't hit a breaking ball from a left-hander for his life.
Yeah, he's a strikeout king.
The shift.
Yeah. Big guy like that's going to strike out.
Yeah,
he's swinging for the fences every pitch.
Yeah, but Ryan's a borderline. Rollins is a borderline. Utley's borderline. It depends on what you're judging.
Sure.
And Cole Hamels, if he could have got, I mean, he was a monster. That. I can't imagine a team, because for 4 or 5 years they won the division, two trips to the World Series. I can't imagine them not getting anyone in the Hall from those teams.
Sure.
I mean, that would be,
If I have one question for you, Craig. If I visit Citizens Bank Ballpark, where do I go to find the Von Hayes statue?
The old 5 for 1.
He's my favorite Philly.
That was his nickname. 5 for 1. And,
what's the 5 for 1 mean?
When they traded for him, they gave up 5 guys for him. Oh. So 5 guys for 1.
Oh, boy. That's a lot to live up to.
Yeah, and he never lived up to it. So that was what he was known as in Philly, 5 for 1.
I think Von's a pretty tough name too.
Yeah.
But Good stuff, man. And again, to close it out, I mean, the Phillies' future looks pretty bright too. You know, I mean, obviously you're in the market for a couple of the marquee free agents, but you know, it's a competitive team in a competitive division this year. But you guys got a shot, man. So good luck in 2019.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I really enjoyed hanging out with you guys tonight. It was a lot of fun. Like to thank Perry and Craig. Also want to tell everybody to check out Perry's website for just a lot of great concert poster art. Go to perryshall.com. So Perry and then Shall, SHALL.com. Anything you got coming up, Perry, that you want to kind of plug here, man? Or
Well, it's not coming up, but I just did shirts for Gilbert Gottfried, so go see him.
Nice.
Awesome.
I designed his first and only shirt that he's ever had. I saw him last night, actually, so that's kind of why I'm thinking of it.
Oh, sweet.
Does he talk like that in real life, or is that like an act?
It's it's like a character, so it's exaggerated.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
He has a little bit of it for the most part, but
Okay.
But yeah, he's super sweet.
That's awesome.
Other than that, yeah, I mean, I'm DJing. I DJ sometimes. I play shows with my bands, and you follow me on social media, and I tell you everything I'm doing that you don't need to care about, but maybe you will.
Well, check out perryshall.com, and you can get all the info you need there, and we'll certainly post all those links as well. Craig, always good to see you, man. Miss you. Hope everything's well, and congrats on being a daddy. That's welcome to the club.
Thanks, man. Well, hopefully we can catch a concert or a game this summer.
I love that. Sounds like a plan. Want to remind everybody. Yeah, absolutely. Want to remind everybody you can check us out at rockchew.com. All of the archives of all our episodes are there. You can check us out on the Twitter and the Instagram at rockinchew. Rockinchew. So check us out there. And until next time, until episode 97, see you again. Take care, everybody.
Peace.
Take care.